I'm about to tell you the most insane story in history. Seriously, you won't believe it. It's about a random teenage girl from some village in France who literally changed the world. This girl couldn't even read, had zero battle experience, but she somehow led an entire army, united a country, and made a guy a king. She was a total legend. But the craziest part? The same miracles that made her famous were used to call her a witch, and the voices she said were from God led her to get captured and burned alive. This is insane. Okay, so check this out. It's 1429, and France is getting absolutely destroyed. They've been losing a war with England for almost 100 years. Their armies, wrecked. Their people, no hope. Their future king, he's basically hiding. He's not even a real king yet. Paris is owned by the enemy. France is about to be completely wiped off the map. So, who saves them? Not some super soldier or a genius general. It was a teenage peasant girl from a forgotten village who claimed she heard the voice of God. This is the story of how that girl saved an entire country and then got burned alive for it. It's wild. You literally cannot understand how insane Joan of Arc was without knowing how bad things were. Imagine a war that's been going on for generations. France was losing badly, their army got crushed over and over. The English controlled massive chunks of the country, even Paris. And the guy who was supposed to be king, the Dauphin Charles, was a total mess. He was so useless they called him the King of Bourges for the tiny bit of land he controlled. He wasn't even crowned. Life for normal people was a complete nightmare. Constant attacks, no food, just fear. It was so bad people thought God had just given up on France. They started telling stories about a young girl who would come and save them, but nobody actually believed it. Then, in a tiny village called Domremy, Joan is born around 1412. She's just a normal peasant girl. She can't read or write. Her life is supposed to be totally average. But when she's 13, everything changes. She said she saw a blinding light in her father's garden and heard a voice. She claimed it was the Archangel Michael, and soon he was joined by Saint Catherine and Saint Margaret. At first, they just told her to be a good kid. But as France kept losing, the mission got insane. The voices told her she was the girl in the prophecies. God picked her to kick the English out and get Charles crowned king in the city of Rams. So you've got a teenager with no money, no power, and zero military training, and she's just been told to save an entire country. The odds are impossible. This story is unbelievable, and we're just getting started. If you think this is as crazy as I do, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. Can you imagine being a 16-year-old girl trying to tell a bunch of tough, grumpy soldiers that you are going to save them? It's insane. Her first stop was the local commander, Robert de Baudricourt, but he literally laughed in her face and told her to go home. But Joan did not give up. She said the voices were nagging her constantly. She came back in January 1429 with a crazy prediction. The French were about to lose a big battle near Orléans, and a few days later, it happened. The commander was shocked. Her being right, plus her insane confidence, started to convince people. 2 knights swore they would help her, so the commander finally caved. He gave her a horse and some guards for an 11-day, 300-mile trip through enemy territory to meet the future king at Chinon. She dressed like a guy to be safe, and when she got to the castle, the king, Charles, tried to trick her. He hid in the crowd and put someone else on the throne. But Joan, who had never even seen him before, walked right past the fake king and knelt in front of the real one. She told him God sent her to save the city of Orléans and make him king. But everyone was still super suspicious. Was she legit, a witch, or just crazy? So, for 3 weeks they had a bunch of high-ranking theologians grill her, trying to trap her. But this girl, with no education, had the best comebacks. When one priest asked what language her voices spoke, she said, "A better one than yours." When they demanded a sign, she said her sign would be the rescue of Orléans. They were speechless and couldn't find anything wrong with her. So the future king, with nothing left to lose, made the biggest bet of his entire life. He literally gave a teenage girl an army. So they gave Joan a custom suit of white armor and a giant banner. She wasn't some boring general planning things out. She was pure hype. She was a living, breathing miracle. And for soldiers who did nothing but lose, her energy was absolutely electric. She completely transformed the French army. First up, Orléans. If this city fell, France was gone. It had been under siege for months and was about to collapse. Then Joan shows up on April 29th, 1429, and everyone freaks out. The old generals wanted to play it safe, but Joan was like, "No, we attack now." On May 4th, she personally led a charge and captured an enemy fort. A few days later, in another huge attack, she's right in the middle of the fight, and bam, she gets shot in the shoulder with a crossbow arrow. The army starts to panic. Their good luck charm is down. But Joan, like an absolute legend, supposedly yanks the arrow out herself, gets it patched up, and runs right back into the fight, holding her banner. Her soldiers see this, go absolutely nuts, and completely crush the enemy, taking the fortress. The English were terrified. They thought she was a witch. Just 9 days after Joan showed up, the English gave up and ran away. This victory was completely impossible, and it changed everything. She actually did it. She gave them their sign. This random girl was now a legit warrior and the hero of all of France. Winning at Orléans was like hitting the launch button. Suddenly, the French were on fire. Joan became so famous that towns held by the English for years just gave up when her army got close. But Joan only cared about one thing: getting the king crowned in Reims, just like her voices told her. Her generals were freaking out because Reims was super deep in enemy territory. But Joan had won so much, nobody could say no to her. They launched a campaign of just insane, back-to-back-to-back wins. In one battle, a rock literally smashed her helmet and knocked her down. She just jumped back up and started screaming at her troops to keep fighting. And they won. The campaign's climax was the Battle of Patay on June 18th, 1429. The English longbowmen were legendary, but Joan's army found them first and charged before they could get ready. It was an absolute wipeout. The English army got destroyed in an open field, a feat that had been unthinkable. After that, it was a victory lap to Reims, as town after town opened their gates. On July 17th, 1429, Charles was finally crowned King Charles VII in Reims Cathedral, and standing right next to him in the best spot in the house was Joan, the girl from a tiny village. This was the ultimate win. She completed her mission. She took a broken army, made them unstoppable, and gave France its king. To her fans, she was a literal saint, but to her enemies, she was the devil. But this is where the story gets tragic. The coronation, her biggest win, was also the start of her downfall. Joan wanted to go all in and attack Paris, but the new king, Charles VII, got scared. He started listening to his advisors, who were jealous of how famous Joan was. An attack on Paris failed, and Joan got wounded again. After that, her magic started to look less real to the king and his court. In the spring of 1430, Joan went to help the city of Compiègne. On May 23rd, she was trapped during a battle, pulled from her horse, and captured by Burgundian soldiers. Just like that, she was the most famous prisoner on earth. And the king she made, King Charles VII, he did nothing to save her. No rescue, no money, nothing. But the English knew this was their ultimate chance. They figured if they could prove Joan was a fraud, they could undo everything she did. They didn't just want her captured, they wanted her publicly destroyed as a heretic. In November 1430, the English paid the Burgundians a fortune, 10,000 livres, for her. She was taken to Rouen, not for a trial, but for a public execution. Her trial in 1431 wasn't a real trial, it was a setup. It looked like a church trial, but the English were paying for everything and pulling all the strings. The whole thing was completely corrupt. Joan, now 19, was held in a military jail, had no lawyer, and was interrogated 24/7 by dozens of educated men trying to trap her. The official charges? Heresy and wearing men's clothes? But really, they were trying to prove she was a witch. For weeks, this teenager with no education stood up to all of them. When they asked if she knew she was in God's grace, a total trick question, she gave the legendary answer: "If I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may God so keep me." But after weeks of this, threatened with torture and being burned alive, she finally cracked. On May 24th, she signed a document renouncing her visions. They spared her life, but sentenced her to life in prison. The English were so mad. They wanted her dead. A few days later, she was wearing men's clothes again and insisting her voices were from God. We don't know if she was tricked or if she chose to go down fighting, but by relapsing into heresy, she sealed her fate. On May 30th, 1431, they marched her out to be burned at the stake in Rouen. An English soldier felt so bad, he made her a small cross out of sticks. As they tied her to the stake, she begged a friar to hold up a crucifix so she could see it. As the fire grew, people said she just screamed, "Jesus!" over and over until she was gone. The English were so determined to erase her that they burned her body 2 more times until there was nothing left but ash, and then they threw the ashes in the Seine River. The English thought that by burning Joan of Arc, they could delete her from history. They could not have been more wrong. Her death was so shocking, one of the guys working for the English literally yelled, "We are lost, for we have burned a saint." Her bravery made her an even bigger legend. The war continued for over 20 more years, but France kept winning, inspired by her. Years later, King Charles VII ordered a new trial. In 1456, a court authorized by the Pope investigated the first trial and said it was a complete sham, declaring Joan innocent and a martyr. But the story gets even crazier. She became a massive symbol for France. Fast forward almost 500 years to 1920. The same church that called her a heretic and had her burned alive made her an official saint. The random girl from a village became a universal symbol of faith. Her life was like a firework, a short, insane burst of light in a dark time. Her enemies tried to put it out, but by killing her, they made her legend last forever. Joan of Arc's story is proof that one person can literally change the world. This is one of the craziest stories ever. What part of this was the most insane to you? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.